Okay. Now you want me talking?
Yeah.
Yes, I use these large bearing races and the balls. You can make a pretty decent smaller knife out of the balls that are out of them. They're excellent steel. I recycle a lot of stuff that way. I grew up in Southern California. My dad had always had a blacksmith forge. He was from Rhode Island, and he'd worked in a livery stable and livery barn and on the farms and stuff. They always had their forges to repair and shoe horses, whatever. So we always had a forge there on the place. They ended up in Visalia, and he farmed there for quite a few years and went into the Army there in about 1917, 16.
Oh wow! Right during the war.
Yes, and went to France.
Oh, he did. Oh my God.
And was wounded but made it through. I really don't know a whole lot about it. He didn't talk about it ever till the day he died almost. But I do know that it bothered him, and he said we did such terrible things during the war. And they were right down in the trenches with the Germans. And it bothered him.
Did he talk about it at the end of his life?
Just that, yeah, that was all. That was all. He just told me that one thing. He says, I don't know what's going to happen. We did such terrible things. And he was a kind of a gentle person. He didn't like that. I started doing all the killing on the farm probably from the time I was 12 years old. He was a school teacher, but he always had a little farm and traded animals and bought and sold whatever. He liked trading. Southern California, when I was a kid, was a pretty neat place. There were miles and miles and miles of open, wild country clear through the San Fernando Valley. We shot rabbits, we camped, we fished in a big reservoir up there. There were truck farms and alfalfa fields, and hell, there was even deer down there. The Japanese had vegetable farms and flower gardens, and one day in the early 40s, I don't remember what year it was, but all of a sudden they were gone. Every last one of them. They packed them up to the internment camps and took them away. And I was very curious as to what had happened to them, because one day they were there and the next day they weren't. I was probably 6.
Okay. Were you aware of the war or any of that?
Yeah, we were aware. I went through high school in San Fernando, and as I said, it's a totally different place and environment than it is now. I was able to spend my summers in the mountains in a pack station that my dad had worked in the summertime. And then when I got to be 16, I got a job working in a garage, doing mechanic work. He had bought me a Model A Ford when I was 14 that had been in a wreck. He paid $15 for it. I spent the next year tearing it apart, scrounging in the junkyard for parts, putting it back together. Got it running good, rebuilt the motor. When I got to be 16, I sold it for $35. Bought a 1936 V8. I thought I was living. Now I wish I had my Model A back. 1931 Roadster. Rumble seat and all. The Roadsters the kids liked because they built hot rods out of them. The sedans and stuff, you could buy them for $10 or $15. We used to cut them off and make what would be considered a dune buggy now out of them.
Oh, really?
Run all over the Angeles Crest Forest with them.
Instead of sticking with mechanicking, then you, at some point, went back to the cattling, right?
Yeah, but after, you know, when you're farming, the way I was farming, you're mechanicking. You're always trying to fix the baler, you're trying to fix the tractor, your mowing machine's broken. And I got away from the blacksmithing because I learned to weld and use the torch, and it was much easier. But when you had a big part to heat, there's nothing like a coal fire to bring it up to where you can work with it. You spend all day with a cutting torch or a rosebud. When I bought the ranch up here after we left Grass Valley, we had a forge and a blacksmith shop there, but I didn't really do a whole lot of smithing. We just used it, you know. It wasn't it's hard to explain. It was something that was always there. If you needed it, it was there. My dad had a pretty nice, I'm pretty sure it was a hay bud and anvil. And when I left there, I brought it up here and I traded it for a dog because there was already an anvil set up in the blacksmith shop at the ranch. And 2 weeks later, I shot the dog. I had 1,000 head of sheep and no dog, and I was kind of desperate. But a bad dog's worse than no dog. I picked up a little bitch at the pound. I don't know what she was doing there. She was a grown dog. She didn't know what you were telling her, but she sure knew how to work sheep. She was dedicated and hardworking, and I could get her up on their backs and run her through over the top of them when I was working in the barns, trimming feet and stuff or shearing. And she was just a hell of a dog. She didn't have a whole lot of force when it come to the cattle, but she'd stay right with it. I don't understand why it takes them so long. I really don't. They've got 6 hours to make a knife.
Well, they start with mystery metals so often, you know, they have to.
Hell, I work with mystery metal all the time.
Every day, I know.
But again, you see, because I do, it wouldn't be a big thing to me.
Yeah.
Some of them have never, that one show, they'd never seen a coal fire ever in their life.
Yeah.
They didn't know how to light the damn thing.
Yeah.
What do you do now, Coach? They've got 4 stations set up. They're pretty nice. They've got power hammers, they've got presses, they've got grinders. I don't know what all's there, but it must be a brutal environment because I've seen several guys just absolutely fade away. And one of them is that J.D. Smith. I took lessons from him on making Damascus 20-some years ago, and he's a hell of a smith. He flat-ass give out.
Really?
Yeah,
Hot.
just gave out. Another big, heavy guy melted and quit. So it must be pretty damn hot in that forge. One thing I don't understand, and it bothers me about the show, nobody ever quenches or nobody ever heat treats the blade.
Yeah.
They quench them, they harden them, and then that's it. Well, if you take a fully hardened blade and put them through some of the rigors of their testing, they're going to crack, they're going to break, they're going to shatter. My dad had worked for a outfitter, pack outfit, up in the Sierras in Mammoth Lakes. And then he started going to the ocean to run the summer camp. He ran a summer camp for kids. And I went to the ocean one year with him, and I decided I'd rather go back to the mountains. So he arranged it for me to go up with Andy and Al Taylor and spend my summers in the mountains. And I got on the bus, Greyhound bus.
How old were you?
I was 14 in San Fernando with a duffel bag, a saddle, a .38, and a .30-30. And I rode up to Mammoth. It wasn't to Mammoth Lakes, it was to, oh, there was a junction out on the road. I can't remember the name of it right now. And they came down and picked me up. And I spent the summer up there. Come fall, when I had to go back to school,
What were you doing up there in the summer?
well, I shod horses, I led dudes around, I broke some mules, just everything you do in a pack outfit. Well, the dudes would just take for rides. The pack outfits we used to take people way back into the back country and set up a camp, and they'd stay there for a week or so and fish. And we had an inflatable boat that we'd take in there, and I'd stay in there and row and cook and do whatever I had to do to keep these people happy. One time they ran out of cigarettes about Wednesday, and they thought they were going to tough it out. Well, about 2 days later, things were getting pretty tight in camp. I had to go back out.
How far?
It was an 8.5 hour hard ride horseback. So 16 hours straight I was back with their cigarettes. And everything was happy again. And
This is like in the middle of the mountains and this.
way back up in the Sierras in a place called Golden Lake up above Mammoth, up above Mammoth there.
So that's 40 miles out. 30 to 40 miles out.
The camp was at Purple Lake, and then we could go up to Golden Lake to catch these golden trout, which aren't anyplace else. So anyhow, I came out, the morning we were supposed to come out, my horses were gone. My horses and mules were gone. And by the time I found them, it was probably 10 or 11 o'clock. And I got them back up and got them saddled and got the packs on them and headed out. It got plumb dark, and I mean plumb dark. I was riding the boss's old Arabian mare called Sugar. She's white, and I could see nothing. I mean nothing for probably 2.5 hours.
How many dudes with you?
I had 4 people and 3 pack outfits, three horses, 3 mules with packs.
And how old are you right now?
14, 15.
14.
Okay, I knew that she was cutting across some of the trails and missing some of the really long switchbacks. I felt that in my mind, but I couldn't see nothing. I mean, I couldn't, it was just, I was virtually just a passenger. So along about 11 o'clock, she stopped, and I kicked her and she wouldn't go. And I got off, and we're at the back gate.
She was standing at the gate?
She was standing at the gate.
With all the dudes and the pack animals
Behind me. I told him, I said, you just hang on, and they'll follow. They told the boss, that boy is wonderful. Why, he must see in the dark like a cat. The boss, he says, yeah. He absolutely knew that I had no idea where I was for at least 2 hours. And I got $20. Right then I decided I probably was never going to smoke. I don't need to cut that off. It's about the right length. I'll make sure it's nice and straight, and we can go to the grinder. After I got out of high school, I moved. My brother-in-law had gone up to Grass Valley with my sister, and they were running a dairy up there. And I was somewhat misbehaving myself and doing a little too much drinking, and they wanted me out of there. Anyhow, I went up to Grass Valley, and I met an old cowboy named Chester Loney. He had a summer permit. I started helping him, and then I'd help them drive cattle and gather cattle and stuff. And another outfit up there that was related to Chester, named Ralph Alderman, asked me if I wanted to go cutting timber. Well, I knew how to run a chainsaw, but that was about it. But he had to have a partner because the insurance company had kind of cracked down on him and wouldn't let him work by himself. So anyhow, I went to work with Ralph. I cut timber for a couple years, making awful good money. But I'd been helping Chester in the wintertime, and I had a few cows. Pop had bought a ranch there, a little ranch, and I had a few cows of my own, and Chester said, "You want to go to work for me?" Well, I quit a job I was making $50 a day. Went to work for $150 a month. Don't make a lot of sense, does it?
For the privilege of getting horsehair on you.
Yep. But I was working for one of the best old-time cowmen that there was. And I learned an awful lot about cattle. We were 7 days on the road, going and coming, driving the cattle to the mountains. One year, he and I did it with just 2 mules and a pack outfit rather than having the truck and the trailer and somebody cooking. 300 head of cows.
Just the 2 of you?
Just the 2 of us. Pack of mangy dogs that were rank and mean. So different. The dogs I have up here are pets.
Hear those little cracks generating?
A ping of death. I don't think so. It was cold enough. This is just kind of an all-purpose knife. It's really handy for opening up a belly. You can slide it right along under the hide and it'll peel it open. It's got a good entry. You can cut into the throat or peel the head away and get into the atlas joint. It's just a real handy configuration. Not quite as good a skinner as the other one. but it will do the skinning, and it feels good to the hand. Would be good in the kitchen. It would be dandy for paring, peeling, cutting up meat. Good camp knife for around the camping fire, whatever you needed to do. It's just an all-purpose, general, good knife. Nothing that much won't do.